I have in front of me here part of my collection of manual focus film cameras, and there's a few behind me as well. In this edition of Jules Voto's Photo Focus, I'm going to explain why I love manual focus film cameras, but I mostly shoot digital. Now, just last week, I finished my first roll of slide film that I've shot in over 20 years, and I used my trusty Nikon F2AS. And out of all the cameras you see here, the F2AS is the newest. This was originally introduced in 1977. So why do I love film cameras? Well, I started with film cameras. In fact, my very first 35mm camera was a Pentax H1A. Not this exact one, I rebought it a few years ago, but this was my first 35. And I loved it. It had no meter, very simple camera, top shutter speed of a 500th of a second. And I was very young, and I had the 55mm f2 lens. Then I upgraded about a year or so later. I traded that camera in on a Pentax Spotmatic, which had a meter. I graduated to modern times with a meter in the camera. Eventually then, about a year and a half or so later, I got my first Nikon, a Nicormat FTN, another camera that I loved. I had this for a long time and got a Nikon F at some point, and so forth and so on. But when I first got interested, I was trying to determine, well, what camera am I going to buy? There were so many choices back in 1970, 1971. I ended up getting the H1A in 71. And I did a lot of research. I bought all the photo magazines. I read test reports. I talked to people. There was a camera store not far from my home. I would go in there, and that's where I eventually bought the Spotmatic. Actually, I didn't get the H1A there. But I loved the Minoltas. I thought they were really sexy cameras. The SRT 101, I believe that's the SRT 101. Yes, I always loved this camera. I loved their ads and I was impressed with them. The SRT 102, I mean, I think they're all great cameras. I also like the Canons. A friend of mine had a Canon FT and I really thought it was solidly made, beautifully made. I love their ads too. Ads when I was a teenager were very important to me on helping me to select the camera. If I liked the pictures in the ads, if I liked the pictures of the cameras, that kind of impressed me. I know it's kind of silly, but it did. So I have a special place for these cameras, even though I rarely use them anymore. When I do, it's usually the F2AS or possibly the Nikon F with the standard prism. I've shot some on the Spotmatic, but I have not put a roll of film. Oh, I think on one of the Minoltas I did. I think on the SRT 102. But the rest of them, I never put film through. I have them up on several different shelves in the area where I have my computer. And I like to look at them. I'll take them out and try various lenses on them. Now the lenses I use on my Nikon mirrorless cameras, and they all work great. The Minolta lenses, the Pentax, of course the Nikon lenses, the Canon lenses, I use them all on my mirrorless cameras. In fact, I have, I don't know, maybe 50 manual focus lenses, and I think I've tried them all. And very pleased with the results. Some are better than others, of course, but so why don't I use these cameras more? That roll of Ektachrome I recently put through that F2AS, like I said, was the first roll of slide film I've shot in over 20 years. Film is very expensive today. That's one of the reasons I don't use them. And also the processing. Now, black and white I can process myself, and I do that from time to time. I, accumulate several rolls and process them, but then I have to get them into the computer. I have to digitize them. So I have to scan them, or I use the Nikon ES2 film digitizer, and it works out fine, but it's another process. It takes more time. You have to make sure your negatives are clean properly. So I use a blower brush or compressed air to clean them. And it's time consuming. And honestly, I don't think the quality is even close to what I get from my Nikon Z8. with that, I shoot my pictures, come home with my card, plug it into the card reader, and I have all my digital images ready to go. I could play around with them in Photoshop or Lightroom, and I just think it's so much better. Now, none of these cameras, none of these film cameras I have are autofocus, although I do have an N90S, which I have never put a roll of film through. Years ago I had one. It's a great camera. But I just feel if I'm going to use film, I want to use one of these older manual focus cameras. I don't know, I just think they were better made back then. They look better, and it's all that nostalgia thing. So that's why I will shoot them, like I said, from time to time, not that often. Now, there are some really good autofocus film cameras, the Canon EOS line, the Nikon Pro models, and others. And many of those cameras are excellent, but I still greatly prefer digital photography. I just think the quality is so much better. I can shoot with my Z8 at 6400, even 12,800. And unless it's printed really big or blown up really big, you see very little noise. You cannot do that with film. The dynamic range of ISO 64 on the Z8 is just fantastic. It gives you medium format quality in a digital camera. I really believe that. I used to shoot Hasselblad, I shot Yashica, I shot Mamiya medium format cameras, and I really loved them back in the day. But I think the quality of images from the Z8 rival those. And there's no reason for me really to shoot film. It's just so much more convenient to shoot the mirrorless. And the autofocus is just fantastic. The metering systems are just fantastic. I have really no complaints except one: battery life. Battery life is not as good. I mean, you could put a battery in this Nikon F2. It takes a silver two silver batteries or a lithium battery, and as long as you make sure you turn your meter off and just don't leave it sitting there with the meter on, that battery could last a year. But with the Z8, you have a EVF, you have the LCD panel on the rear, and it uses up a lot of battery power, but still the batteries are small, they're fairly inexpensive, so you just carry a spare or two. One other thing I need to mention, these older film cameras, if you're wearing glasses, it's difficult to see the entire screen. You kind of have to scan the screen. In the early 80s, when Nikon came out with the HP high eye point viewfinder for the F3, I quickly bought one for my F3, and that solved that problem. But when I go back to these old cameras, in fact, I recently shot with my F2AS and the Z8 side by side, and it was a much more pleasant experience using that Z8 because of the viewfinder and other things, the grip, it's just easier to hold. And of course, in-body image stabilization. I could go on and on and on. Now, I know a lot of you out there, I know a lot of my subscribers love to shoot film. And that's great. If it works for you, if you're happy with the results, keep doing it. And you could pick up these old film cameras for a lot less money than the latest digital cameras. However, in recent years, the prices have gone up. So I will continue to show love to my 35mm manual focus film cameras. Like I said earlier, I take them out, I'll fire off a few frames just to hear the sound of the shutter. I'll dust them off and, like I said, try various lenses. But if I'm going out to shoot pictures, 99 times out of 100, I'm going out with my mirrorless cameras. So that's it for this video. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them in the comments below. And let me know what you shoot. What are your favorite film cameras? And do you shoot them alongside digital? Or are you exclusively film or exclusively digital? So leave your comments in the comments below. or your questions, and I always try to respond to all comments and all questions. And if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. I usually publish a new video every Monday morning and Wednesday morning at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. So thanks for watching, and I will talk to you soon.